want to go ahead and talk about some of the teams that have helped themselves and maybe hurt themselves this offseason, at least in our opinion. Jay, if we could start off talking about some of the teams in your opinion, maybe 3 teams that you think have helped themselves this offseason.
I think number 1, the Chicago Bears. Quarterbacks like that don't grow on trees. That's your biggest problem, biggest flaw in that team. You can go out and get yourself a guy like Jay Cutler. I've had several NFL head coaches tell me they would have actually given up more to get a guy like Jay Cutler. The other thing, too, for them, Brian Urlacher, everybody I've talked to in there, and I've talked to Brian as well, it seems like he's back to being the old Brian Urlacher. Bulk back up. It's just his mind is clear, so they think that they're now set at quarterback on both sides of the ball. Number 2, the New York Jets. The Jets really needed a change in their culture over there. It was just such a difficult place to come to work to. You're going to work and, you have Eric Mangini just making it really hard on guys there, and his assistant coaches, the players. Rex Ryan is a big, affable guy. Obviously, he's very confident, comes in, makes it fun again. I think that's going to be huge for the Jets as well. And they made a lot of moves, free agency as well. And then last team probably will surprise you, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. They bring in T.J. Houshmandzadeh, who they actually stole from the Minnesota Vikings, where I shouldn't say that. The Minnesota Vikings is actually a pretty wild story. The Vikings, Seattle had T.J. there. He flew to Minnesota to go meet with them, and Seattle sent a car for them to pick him back up and leave the Vikings complex and bring him back. The Minnesota Vikings actually sent a decoy. They sent another player in the car pretending he was T.J. Houshmandzadeh to actually keep T.J. there. That didn't go over too well with Seattle, but in the end, Seattle gets him. But not only that, also getting Curry from Wake Forest linebacker. I thought he's as close to a can't-miss prospect that you've possibly had in the NFL draft in the last couple of years.
3 teams that may have hurt themselves this offseason, Jay. I know talking about Jay Cutler, the addition in Chicago, addition, subtraction.
Obviously, number 1 here has to be the Denver Broncos. And you know what? Like I said, quarterbacks like that don't grow on trees. Jay Cutler didn't want to be there, wasn't happy with it. Oh, well. Boo-hoo. There's a lot of guys who don't want to be there. Anquan Bolden doesn't want to be with the Arizona Cardinals. Chad Johnson doesn't want to be with the Cincinnati Bengals. Boo-hoo. He has a contract. Like I said, those guys don't grow on trees. Now, also, you have the problem there with Brandon Marshall, so it's just been a bad offseason for them. And it's been a bad offseason because their owners gotten involved too much. The reason why you hire your head coach, your GM, your personnel people is to let them make those decisions. When your owner jumps in because he gets personal where somebody hasn't called him back. Like I said, so what? The guy hasn't called you back. Oh, well. Yeah. Boo-hoo. When camp starts, it'll all be forgotten. But obviously, that wasn't the case here.
Yep. You had mentioned Eric Mangini before. He goes to the Cleveland Browns now. Again, or do I read the tea leaves here, Jay?
Exactly right. Mangini going to Cleveland. And Randy Lerner, the owner, thought that everybody inside the Jets organization loved Eric Mangini. That wasn't the case at all. And there was a lot of friction there between coaches and Eric, between players. Players, it just was so tight. He made it a very not fun atmosphere. Then they obviously go and they get rid of K2, also Kellen Winslow. So, yeah, I'm not so crazy about what they're doing over there.
Clearly a lot of people might put the Detroit Lions as one of these teams that really has a long way to go, Jay. But in my opinion, they made some strides. I do not think they're one of the 3 teams we would have to put as one that didn't have a good offseason.
No, I think they had a very good offseason, but I don't think they're a playoff team. The great thing there about Jim Schwartz's job, and I've told this to a couple of the coaches, the assistants who were interviewing, I said that's the number 1 coaching vacancy this offseason. Well, I shouldn't say that. Number 1 was probably Denver because they had a quarterback at the time. Now take that out. The reason why it's number 1, if you can win 2 games, 3 games for that city, they'll probably throw you a parade. If you win 5 games, you probably get a key to the city. If you go to the playoffs, they may give you a piece of Canada. I mean, you will. And you kind of change history over there because of how much the automotive industry is really struggling. Similar to what happened with Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints after Katrina, you have a chance to really affect America if you can kind of put some life and happiness back in the Motor City, which has just been so dreary the last year and a half, 2 years.
Brandon Marshall of the Denver Broncos, wide receiver, has been a source of controversy in recent weeks. Shows up at a minicamp, walks out after meeting with Pat Bowlen, apparently thought he was going to be traded. Should the Denver Broncos look at pursuing that move of trading Brandon Marshall just like they did Jay Cutler earlier this offseason?
No, absolutely not. Guy's talented. He's one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers in the National Football League. He wants a new contract. Okay, he wants a new contract. No. That's, again, Pat Bowlen keeps getting involved because he keeps getting upset. Just let your guys just deal with it, And I've talked to Brandon. We've been texting each other back and forth. And it's, hey, like I said, if he just keeps his nose clean and does what he's supposed to do, he'll get paid.
Gotcha. Plaxico Burress, another wide receiver in the NFL that's making a lot of news this offseason. Jay, it seems like things have cooled off as far as interest from NFL teams for Plaxico. Am I reading the tea leaves correctly there?
Yeah, I don't know if the interest was ever as strong as was made. I think people are there trying to help him out. The problem with Plaxico is he can only go with a certain type of coach. He's not going to go to Chicago, not going to go to a place like that. Tampa's saying they're not interested, but he can only go to a certain type of coach. He probably could have gone well with a Raheem Morris. But, with Tom Coughlin, if Tom said, hey, Plex, I need you to stand over here, Plexico would sit. Plex, if I need you to turn right, Plex would turn left. It was just whatever it was, he would just completely ignore Tom, and that's how he is with a lot of authority figures. So I think he's not made for every head coach. He's not made for a guy who's going to be very stern and crack the whip line. It's not going to, that's not going to be a good fit for Plexico.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has some decisions coming up on some suspended players. Plaxico Burress, Dante Stallworth, and, of course, Michael Vick. Jay, provided Michael...
here's the thing about Dante Stallworth. Everybody keeps talking about him like, it's Dante Stallworth. It's not like we're talking about Randy Moss. He's a okay player who... I just don't see how it really affects anybody so much if he's suspended or not suspended.
You're just trying to mess up my question, right?
Okay, go ahead.
I was really going somewhere with this, Jay, and I have feelings too.
No, you don't.
That actually is true. I work with you.
I don't even know you.
Jay, to talk about this, Michael Vick, and obviously Commissioner Goodell has a decision to make going forward with Michael Vick. If he is reinstated at some point, what type of interest do you think he will have? You know what?
Every team is pulling off him like he's got the plague, but if I'm a team, I sign him up in a heartbeat. And the reason why is the lack of quality backup quarterbacks inside the National Football League. I mean, for goodness sakes, John Fox 2 years ago signed Vinny Testaverde, who's like older than me and you put together, older than our parents put together. And the other thing is the Wildcat. To get him in to be your backup quarterback and also have a Wildcat quarterback sitting there. I talked to a head coach last week who told me that you have no idea how much extra work we had to put into our OTAs just getting ready to defend the Wildcat offense. That's just, if you have a Michael Vick who's running it now, it's going to make that defensive coordinator that week, his job that much tougher.
And, Jay, finally wrapping things up, the Glaze Across America tour coming back. I know you got the tour bus ready,
right.
the airplanes, the limousine services, you're wheeling and dealing. Where do you think Glaze Across America is going to begin this year at foxsports.com?
Turks and Caicos?
Not bad.
No. I'm starting here in Extreme Couture because Randy and I have started up this MMA athletics, getting a couple of NFL guys out here, start training for their season, and it's going pretty well. And then from here, I think I'm going to finish up my off season here in Vegas with Randy in this place, and then go down probably Atlanta. Start in Atlanta with the Falcons to try and torture Tony Gonzalez in his first day on the job. Yeah, pretty much.
That's not a bad one.
No.
Speaking of
he's easy to abuse.
And, of course. But how about him abusing defenses? What do you think his addition means to the Atlanta Falcons?
I think for Matt Ryan, what a great gift for him. They talk about making a move to prevent a guy from having a sophomore slump. Bringing a guy like Tony in is huge.
Yep, he might provide the knockout punch. Let's type you can get here at Extreme Couture. This is Alex Marvez with Jay Glazer, foxsports.com.